To make matters worse, I started noticing little things that made me question whether he even cared about saving us. He would leave early in the morning, claiming he had work, but I couldn't help wondering if he was really going to see Lisa. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from her, and though I didn't check it anymore, the sound alone was enough to drive me insane. I began isolating myself, too. Friends and family reached out, asking if everything was okay, but I didn't want to talk about it. How could I explain something I didn't fully understand myself? All I knew was that I felt trapped, stuck between anger, sadness, and confusion, unsure of what to do next. At night, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. Had I missed the signs? Could I have done something differently to prevent this? Or was it all just inevitable, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode? Living like this was exhausting. I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air while everyone around me moved on as if nothing was wrong. But the truth was, everything was wrong. My life, my marriage, my future, all of it was hanging by a thread, and I didn't know how much longer I could hold on. One evening, after weeks of silence and tension, he finally broke down. He sat me down at the kitchen table, his face pale and his hands trembling. "We need to talk," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. I braced myself, unsure of what was coming next. Another apology? Another excuse? But what he said next left me speechless. "I've been thinking about us, about Lisa, about the baby," he began, avoiding my eyes. "And I think I have a solution, a way for all of us to be happy. All of us." I repeated, my voice cold and sharp. "You mean you, me, Lisa, and your child?" "Yes," he said quickly, as if trying to get the words out before I could interrupt. "I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. What if we became one big family? We could all live together, you, me, Lisa, and the baby. That way, I wouldn't have to choose between you, and the baby would have both parents in their life." I stared at him, my mouth hanging open in disbelief. Was he serious? Did he really think this was a viable solution? My mind raced, trying to process what he was saying. Live with the woman who had destroyed my marriage? Raise his child with her under the same roof? The very idea made me sick to my stomach. "Are you insane?" I finally managed to say, my voice shaking with anger. "You cheated on me, got another woman pregnant, and now you want us to play house like some twisted TV drama? How could you even suggest that?" "I'm not suggesting anything twisted," he shot back, his tone defensive. "I'm just trying to find a way to make things work for everyone. You're the one being unreasonable." "Unreasonable?" I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. "You're asking me to share you with the woman who ruined my life, and I'm the unreasonable one? Do you hear yourself right now?" "It's not about sharing," he insisted, his voice rising. "It's about coexisting. About giving the baby a stable home with both parents involved. Isn't that what matters most?" "No, it's not," I shouted, slamming my hand on the table. "What matters most is trust, loyalty, and respect, things you threw away the moment you slept with her. And now you expect me to just roll over and accept this ridiculous plan? Forget it." He looked at me, his expression a mix of frustration and desperation. "So what do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Walk away from my child? Abandon Lisa? Is that what you're saying?" "Yes," I yelled, tears streaming down my face. "That's exactly what I'm saying. Because every time you choose them, you're choosing to destroy me. So pick, damn it. Me or them." For a moment, he just sat there, staring at me as if he couldn't believe what I was saying. Then he stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. "I can't do this anymore," he muttered before walking out of the room, leaving me alone with my anger and tears. That night, after his ridiculous proposal, something inside me snapped. I was done being the victim, the woman who sat back and let her husband walk all over her. If he thought he could have both me and Lisa, if he believed he could destroy my life without consequences, then he was wrong. It was time for him to feel the same pain he had caused me. I started by doing some digging. I knew Lisa worked at the same company as my husband, so it wasn't hard to find her on social media. At first, I just observed, scrolling through her posts, trying to understand what kind of person she was. She seemed ordinary, a little insecure, maybe even lonely. Perfect. If she was vulnerable, that meant she could be manipulated. I created a fake profile under a different name and sent her a friend request. She accepted almost immediately, probably eager for any form of connection. Over the next few days, I carefully built a rapport with her, pretending to be a concerned colleague who just happened to know about her situation with my husband. He talks about you sometimes, I wrote in one message, keeping my tone casual but sympathetic. I can tell he cares about you. Lisa opened up quickly, sharing how confused and overwhelmed she felt. I never meant for this to happen, she confessed in one message. I love him, but I don't know if he feels the same way. He says he wants us all to be a family, but sometimes I wonder if he's just trying to keep everyone happy. Her words made me sick, but they also gave me an idea. If I could turn her against him, if I could make her see him for the selfish, manipulative man he truly was, then I could destroy their relationship and get my revenge. So I started planting seeds of doubt, subtly pointing out his flaws and inconsistencies. Does he ever talk about his wife? I asked one day. Like, does he really plan to leave her? Or is he just saying that to keep you around? At first, Lisa defended him, insisting he loved her and wanted to make things work. But the more I pushed, the more cracks began to show in her confidence. Sometimes I feel like he's not fully committed, she admitted after a week of messaging. Like he's still torn between us. Bingo. That's exactly what I wanted her to think. I kept feeding her doubts, dropping little hints about how my husband had confided in me about his struggles with the situation. He told me he doesn't know if he can handle being pulled in two directions forever, I wrote, careful to sound neutral but concerned. He seems really stressed. By the end of the second week, Lisa was a mess. She stopped responding to his calls, accusing him of lying and stringing her along. Meanwhile, I sat back and watched the chaos unfold, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction every time she questioned their relationship. My plan was working, he was losing control, just like I had when I found out about them. His face turned red with anger. How dare you interfere in my life? In our lives? Who gave you the right to sabotage everything? The same way you sabotaged our marriage. I shot back, standing up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. You think you can cheat on me, get another woman pregnant, and then expect me to just sit back and watch while you ruin everyone's lives? No. I wasn't going to let you win, not without consequences. He stared at me, stunned into silence for a moment before his expression hardened. So this is what it's come to? Revenge? You're no better than me. His words hit me like a slap. Was he right? Had I become the same person I despised? The thought made me sick, but I refused to back down. At least I'm owning up to what I did, I said coldly. Unlike you, who keeps making excuses and shifting blame. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with unspoken accusations and unresolved pain. Finally, he sighed, running his hands through his hair. What do you want from me, huh? Do you want me to beg for forgiveness? To promise I'll change? Because I already told you, I'm sorry. I messed up. But nothing I say or do seems to matter to you anymore. That's because your words mean nothing. I shouted, tears streaming down my face. You betrayed me, not once, but over and over again. And now you act like it's my fault for not forgiving you. How am I supposed to trust you when every decision you make is selfish and reckless? I don't know, he yelled back, his voice cracking. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe it can't be fixed. Maybe we're too far gone. His admission hung in the air like a death sentence. For months, I had clung to the hope that we could somehow salvage our marriage, that love would conquer all. But hearing him say those words, the finality in his tone, it shattered whatever tiny fragment of hope I had left. That night, I packed a bag and left. Not forever, not yet, but enough to clear my head and figure out what I truly wanted. As I drove away, the weight of everything we had lost pressed down on me. Our home, our dreams, our future, all of it was gone, reduced to ashes because of choices we couldn't take back. Leaving that night was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Driving away from the home we had shared, the life we had built together, felt like ripping a bandage off a wound that hadn't even begun to heal. I didn't have a clear plan, just a suitcase full of clothes and a heart heavy with regret, anger, and sadness. All I knew was that I needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out who I was without him. I stayed with a close friend for a few weeks, avoiding his calls and messages. At first, he begged me to come back, promising to change, to make things right. But as the days turned into weeks, his pleas grew quieter, more resigned. "I'll always love you," he wrote in one last text before stopping altogether. Those words should have brought me comfort, but instead, they only deepened my ache. Love wasn't enough, not anymore. During that time, I began seeing a therapist. Talking to someone outside of the chaos helped me untangle the web of emotions I'd been drowning in. She encouraged me to focus on myself, to rediscover the parts of me I'd lost in the wreckage of our marriage. Slowly, painfully, I started rebuilding. I reconnected with old hobbies, spent time with friends I'd neglected, and even took up yoga to calm my restless mind. It wasn't easy, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was moving forward instead of standing still. As for Lisa, I never spoke to her again after our meeting at the cafe. A part of me wondered if she ever found out who I really was, if she realized the supportive colleague who had pushed her to leave my husband was actually his wife. I hoped she hadn't. She didn't deserve to carry the guilt of what I'd done, just as I didn't deserve to bear the weight of his betrayal alone. Months later, I filed for divorce. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. Our marriage had become a toxic cycle of hurt, revenge, and broken promises, a shell of what it once was. Signing those papers felt like closing a chapter one had clung to for far too long. It wasn't just the end of my marriage, it was the beginning of something new, something uncertain but hopeful. Now, as I sit here writing this, I realize how much I've changed. The pain hasn't disappeared, it probably never will, but it no longer controls me. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's actions, it's about letting go of the anger so you can heal. And while I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive him, or myself, I do know that I'm stronger than I thought. Life goes on, and so do I. The scars will always be there, reminders of the lessons I've learned about trust, love, and resilience. But for the first time in a long time, I feel ready to face whatever comes next. After all, endings are just beginnings in disguise. I never thought my marriage would end like this, shattered by betrayal and lies. My husband and I used to have a good life together. We laughed, shared dreams, and supported each other through tough times. But somewhere along the way, things changed. He became distant, always working late or making excuses to stay out longer. At first, I told myself it was just stress from his job, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One evening, while he was in the shower, I picked up his phone to check the time. That's when I saw them, texts between him and someone named Lisa. The messages were filled with affectionate words and plans to meet up. My heart sank as I scrolled through them, each line confirming my worst fears. He was having an affair. When he came out of the bathroom, I confronted him, holding up his phone as evidence. "Who is Lisa?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. At first, he tried to deny it, but when he realized I had proof, he broke down. "It just happened," he said, avoiding my eyes. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it had gone far. Too far. Not only had he cheated on me, but there was more to the story, something even bigger than I could have imagined. Something that would change everything forever. That night, we argued until we were both exhausted. He begged for forgiveness, promising that he still loved me and wanted to make things work. But how could I trust him again after what he'd done? I went to bed feeling empty, unsure if our marriage could ever recover, or if I even wanted it to. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of the nightmare. The days that followed were a blur of anger, tears, and unanswered questions. I couldn't look at him without feeling sick. Every time he tried to touch me or apologize, I pulled away. How could he expect me to forgive him so easily? He had destroyed everything we had built together. One evening, after another heated argument, he finally sat me down and told me everything. I didn't plan for this to happen, he began, his voice shaky. Lisa and it started as something small. Just talking at work, you know? But then, he trailed off, unable to meet my eyes. No, I don't know, I snapped, my voice cold. Explain it to me. Explain how you ended up sleeping with her. He flinched at my words, but continued. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I never meant to hurt you. I swear, I still love you. But Lisa, she's having my baby. I can't just walk away from that. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. A baby. Our marriage was already broken, but now there was a child involved, a constant reminder of his betrayal. I wanted to scream, cry, and throw something all at once. Instead, I just stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. So what now? I asked, my voice trembling. You think you can have both of us? Keep your perfect little family with me while playing daddy to her kid? I don't know what I'm supposed to do, he shouted, running his hands through his hair. I don't want to lose you, but I can't abandon my child either. I thought maybe we could figure something out. Together. Together. I repeated, my voice rising. You cheated on me, got another woman pregnant, and now you want us to figure something out? Are you serious right now? He looked at me, pleading. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I still love you. We've been through so much. Can't we find a way to make this work for all of us? For all of us? I laughed bitterly. You mean you, me, Lisa, and your baby? Is that what you're suggesting? That we all live happily ever after like some twisted fairy tale? He didn't answer, but the look on his face said it all. That's exactly what he wanted, to somehow keep both women in his life and pretend everything was fine. The audacity of it made me sick. How could he even think this was an option? Did he really believe I would share him with the woman who ruined my marriage? That night I lay awake, replaying his words over and over in my mind. His confession didn't bring clarity, it only deepened my confusion and pain. Part of me wanted to leave, to walk away from this mess and start over. But another part of me clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could fix things. After all, we had loved each other once. Wasn't that worth fighting for? But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the image of him with Lisa or the child they had created together. It felt like a knife twisting in my chest every time I thought about it. And the worst part? He didn't seem to understand how much he had hurt me. To him, this was just a problem to solve. But to me, it was the end of everything I had believed in. The days turned into weeks, and our home became a battleground of silence and tension. We were living together, but it felt like we were strangers sharing the same space. He tried to act normal, as if nothing had happened, but I couldn't bring myself to even look at him. Every time he walked into a room, my stomach churned with anger and resentment. How could he expect me to just move on after what he'd done? He kept saying the same things over and over. I'm sorry, I love you, we can fix this. But his words felt hollow, like empty promises he didn't truly mean. And then there was Lisa. She was always there, lingering in the background, even when she wasn't physically present. Her name came up constantly. Lisa needs this. Lisa said that, the baby, it was suffocating. I felt like I was losing not just my husband, but also my sense of self. One night, after another argument about his constant communication with Lisa, I snapped. Do you even realize how much you're hurting me? I shouted, tears streaming down my face. Every time you talk about her, every time you run off to see her, it's like you're stabbing me all over again. I'm not running off to see her, he shot back, his voice rising. I'm trying to be responsible. She's having my child, for God's sake. What do you want me to do? Abandon them? Yes, that's exactly what I want. I screamed, surprising even myself. I want you to choose me or her. You can't have both. He stared at me, stunned, before shaking his head. You don't understand. It's not that simple. It is that simple. I yelled. You either love me and want to fix this marriage, or you don't. Stop pretending you can have everything your way. After that fight, we stopped talking altogether. The silence between us was deafening. We slept in separate rooms, avoided meals together, and barely acknowledged each other's presence. It was like we were ghosts haunting the same house, unable to find peace. But as much as I hated him in those moments, I couldn't bring myself to leave. Part of me still clung to the hope that we could somehow salvage what was left of our marriage. Maybe if he stopped seeing Lisa, maybe if he showed me he truly regretted what he'd done, maybe then I could forgive him. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that easy. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend overnight or sometimes ever. But even as I reveled in my success, a small part of me wondered if this was truly worth it. Was revenge going to bring me peace? Or was I just perpetuating the cycle of pain? For now, though, I didn't care. All I wanted was for him to hurt as much as I did. The fallout from my manipulation of Lisa began to unfold faster than I expected. Within days, she stopped responding to my husband's calls and texts altogether. When he finally confronted her at work, demanding to know what was going on, she unleashed a torrent of accusations that left him reeling. "You've been lying to me this whole time," she shouted, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. "I thought you were going to leave your wife for us, for our baby. But now I see you're just using me like everyone else." He tried to defend himself, but his words only made things worse. "That's not true," he insisted, his tone desperate. "I care about you and the baby. I always have. But it's complicated." "Complicated?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "No, it's simple. You can't have both of us. Either you're with me or you're not. Stop playing games." Watching their argument from afar gave me a sick sense of satisfaction. Every tear in Lisa's eyes, every crack in his composure, felt like justice served. He had done this to me, made me feel worthless, abandoned, and betrayed, and now he was experiencing the same pain tenfold. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of power, like I was finally taking back control of my life. But revenge is never as clean or satisfying as you imagine. As much as I enjoyed seeing him suffer, I couldn't ignore the emptiness gnawing at me. Was this really who I had become? A woman so consumed by anger and hurt that she would stoop to manipulation and deceit? The guilt crept in slowly, whispering doubts into my mind. Had I gone too far? Still, I pressed on. My next move was bolder, a direct confrontation with Lisa herself. Using my fake profile, I arranged to meet her under the guise of offering support. We met at a quiet cafe, and when I saw her face to face, I almost felt sorry for her. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying, her hands shaking as she clutched her coffee cup. For a moment, I considered telling her the truth, that I was his wife, but I pushed the thought aside. This wasn't about compassion. It was about payback. "I don't know what to do anymore," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I love him, but I can't keep living like this, constantly wondering if he'll ever choose me." "He won't," I said bluntly, letting a hint of cruelty slip into my tone. "Men like him never change. They want everything without giving anything up." "Trust me, I know." She stared at me, searching my face for answers. "What should I do?" "Leave him," I said firmly. "Cut him out of your life before he ruins you completely. You deserve better than someone who treats you like an option instead of a priority." Her expression hardened, resolve replacing her vulnerability. "You're right," she said after a long pause. "I'm done waiting for him to make up his mind. It's over." As I watched her walk away, I felt a strange mix of triumph and regret. On one hand, I had succeeded in tearing them apart, just as they had torn apart my marriage. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line, a boundary I might never be able to uncross. When my husband came home that night, visibly shaken and defeated, I didn't gloat. Instead, I simply asked, "What happened with Lisa?" His silence told me everything I needed to know. The days that followed were a storm of emotions, anger, guilt, and exhaustion crashing over me like waves. My revenge had worked. Lisa was out of the picture, and my husband was a wreck. But instead of feeling victorious, I felt hollow. The satisfaction I'd expected never came. Instead, I was left with a gnawing sense of emptiness and the realization that hurting him hadn't fixed anything. If anything, it had made everything worse. One evening, after another silent dinner where we sat at opposite ends of the table, he finally broke the silence. "What did you do?" he asked, his voice low but sharp. His eyes locked onto mine, searching for answers. For a moment, I considered denying it, pretending I had no idea what he was talking about. But something in his gaze stopped me. "What are you talking about?" I countered, keeping my tone neutral. "Don't play dumb," he snapped, slamming his fist on the table. "Lisa ended things with me. She said she knows everything, that I've been lying to her, stringing her along, treating her like an option." "Did you have something to do with that?" I froze, caught off guard by how quickly he'd pieced it together. Part of me wanted to deny it, to keep up the charade, but another part, a tired, broken part, just wanted the truth to come out. "Maybe I did," I admitted, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "And maybe she was right to end things. You've done nothing but lie and manipulate since this whole mess started."